All right. So, once upon a time, a long time ago, someone said these words, making great games doesn't sell consoles. That was said by, ex-CEO of Xbox, Phil Spencer, on like a kind of funny interview shortly after the Redfall review came out, and it was a terrible game, and Xbox was dead last by Nintendo and PlayStation, and it just looks everything looks so bleak for Xbox. I remember during that period. Again, not that things look great now, but I just remember they had no games. The games that were releasing were terrible. 30 frames per second was a thing. It was a whole conversation, and I think there is this long like need to change in the game industry. The game developers, hardware manufacturers, software designers, etc. They're all trying to figure out this new landscape of gaming. And then Pokemon Pokopia comes out. And I think Pokemon Pokopia proves a lot of things. And in this video, I kind of want to talk about a lot of what Pokemon Pokopia proves as far as the game industry, if that makes sense. If you guys like this video, like the video, subscribe if you can. Let me know down below your guys' thoughts. And I'm just going to get into it real quick. All right, so first things first, full transparency. I haven't played Pokemon Pokopia. I'm not really into cozy games. I didn't really like Dragon Quest Builders. I don't like Minecraft. I don't like Animal Crossing. Nothing about this screams anything that I want to play, minus the fact that it's Pokemon. I love Pokemon, right? But beyond that, nothing about it compels me to buy it or try it out. If somebody else I know has it, then I'll try it on their Switch and see if I like it there. But beyond that, nothing that I want to get into. So, with that transparency out of the way, I have been watching this game kind of blow up to like ways that people didn't expect, right? And I think when you see like the Nintendo content creators and they're always like, where's Nintendo's, big games? Where's their system sellers? They need this dynamic game. They need the Mario or the Zelda. And Pokemon Pokopia comes out, and nobody, not even Nintendo, not the Pokemon, no one expected to be this phenomenon that it was, right? And you see this game is sold out everywhere. Switch 2s are being sold out. Like this game is moving consoles. A game that no one expected to move consoles is moving consoles. Everyone thought Mario Kart 8 World would be the one, and that, for whatever reason wasn't what it was. But Pokemon Pokopia, a game that nobody expected, is moving consoles. And first things first, this proves, the logic that great games sell consoles, point blank period. Like there's no if and buts about that. When we look at, why people buy these consoles, it's for the games. And yes, third party games are going to come. But I doubt people are buying a Switch 2 to play Resident Evil Requiem. And that's an amazing game. That's a great game. I just don't think people are buying the Switch 2 with Resident Evil Requiem in mind, right? They're buying it for games like Pokemon Pokopia, right? This undoubtedly was a console defining game for the 5, 6, 10 years later when we talk about the Switch 2. We're gonna talk about what happened with Pokemon Pokopia, a game that no one expected to do great, and it just blew out all expectations. So that's point one, that Pokemon Pokopia proves that great games move consoles, which kind of baffles me as why, you know, Xbox still, isn't moving in this direction again. And there's a lot of like arguments about, oh well, they can't push back to, they've already opened up the gates. F that. Look at what PlayStation has already announced, that they're not gonna go put their games on PC anymore. They're closing the gates. And I think PlayStation's catching up again to what they should have. The PS4 was this walled garden, right? It was all these amazing, innovative exclusives, and then they messed it all up with the PlayStation 5 as far as like, you know, just their games not really releasing. Their catalog isn't as strong as it was in the PS4 or even arguably the PS3 generation. And again, all that is subjective about how you want to look at it, but overall, like, I think PlayStation is getting it back together, right? They're releasing more games this year than they have in a long time. I think they're doubling down on, the console space, something that Nintendo has never veered away from. And if you notice, oh, why is Nintendo always a company that's sound? It's because they do what they do when they double down on it, right? They double down on games. They double down on games that are gonna help their console diversify their portfolios, right? People are like, "Where's the 3D Mario platformer?" Okay, well, we're still working on that. In the meantime, here's Pokemon Pokopia. Like have this one for now, and if you don't like that, something else will come later down the road, right? So it's one of those type of things that I think in gaming, I think we like not us as gamers, but I think the business end is overcomplicating the hell out of this, right? They're trying to chase games like Fortnites, and they're trying to chase, you know, games everywhere. They're always trying to chase these things. But I think Nintendo has always kind of known that like it's the games that matter. Nothing else. Make a good game, release it on your console, point blank period. Obviously there's like business ends about how much money goes into making that game, how much money you're gonna get on return on investment, et cetera, right? But I think overall though, if you're specifically a hardware manufacturer, like just double down on your games, double down on your IP, and that's something that I think Pokemon Pokopia is strengthening in on, and it's making it's just or at least reminding me like, hey, dude, like as much as gaming has changed in the decades it's been around, the one thing that stays the same is these games are important to these consoles, right? And the other thing too that I kind of want to bring up that I noticed about Pokemon Pokopia is like with a lot of content creators, I think they're making videos about what to expect in the next direct. They're always looking forward to what hasn't came out yet or what they want to come out. And something like Pokemon Cahoeia comes underneath their nose, and no one expects it to blow up the way it does because they didn't imagine this game would be what it is. And I think that's something super important. It's like as much as a lot of us have been gaming and we know what the constants are, there's always a chance that something like a Pokemon Copia, something like no one expected, can blow up the way it does. And it's always the games we never expect. Last year was Clair Obscure Expedition 33. No one expected that game to blow up the way it does. And it's one of those type of things that as much as people say they know or they think they know, blah blah blah, it's just more and more obvious that hey man, like anything could happen. Anything could be great. I think, when I was a kid, one of my favorite games on the N64 was Pokemon Snap. If Pokemon Snap, didn't have the lineage that it did, right? And it came out this year, whatever, and no one would expect anything to happen with that game, really. I don't think so. I think that's such a weird idea of a game of going around just taking a picture of Pokemon. Like no one would have thought that would have blown up the way it would have blown up. And I think the more we start trying to you know, act like we know or this is definitive. This is how things have been. This is how things have always been. I think the more we start to lose track of what what gaming is, I think overall, like these developers, especially Nintendo, who diversifies their portfolio with, you know, Splatoon is your competitive shooter. They have a 3D platform on Mario. They have an action adventure game with Link or Zelda, right? They have all these different strong IPs that they've nurtured through hell or high water. All their I think all their IPs have gone through the worst of times and the best of times, but Nintendo has stood by and nurtured these IPs to the point where they're just iconic. Pokemon hasn't always been the greatest IP. I'm very critical on where Pokemon is as a brand nowadays. With that being said, though, this is a brand that has been nurtured properly. They're never gonna let these type of IPs go. They're gonna stand by these IPs, and obviously there's IPs like Star Fox and stuff like that don't get as much love as they should. With that being said, it's like it's one company developing a lot of products, so I understand that there's an overall umbrella of return on investment. There's the business end of that part, right? I get that part. The part that I think that we need to stop is we just need to relax. I think gamers are so you know ready for the hype, ready for that next big thing that they want, and then just something like this happens, and it's unexpected, and no one expects it. And I think that this game proves that a smash hit, a console seller can come from anywhere. And yes, obviously, Pokemon is one of it is the biggest entertainment property ever. But I mean, we've seen it happen with other games like Declare Obscure Expedition 33. Baldur's Gate 3, before Baldur's Gate 3 came out, I don't think people were looking at it the way that we do now. People were just kind of like, oh, that's a. I remember that had a Game Awards trailer the year before it released, and I remember watching that trailer. I was like, ooh, this looks funky. This does not look good. And then the game came out, and it was this massive, massive thing. And every year we have that, I think. And I think the more we start just kind of allowing games to release and attacking them with open minds, the more, the less we will be surprised by, oh my God, I didn't expect that to sell. And I think even Nintendo, who didn't expect this game to be what it was, I think that's very telling on just people overthinking the game industry nowadays. And obviously, it's a very complicated industry. Obviously, it's a very complicated business. Just overall, though, in the end of the day, like it is an entertainment brand. You know, obviously, there's like the artistic side and all that stuff, but it is something that is here to entertain. They are designed to keep people entertained, and as long as you do that, you're fine. You know, and I think that's proven time and time again with a lot of these games. And I just hope that the gaming industry overall stops chasing these trends of what they think will pop off and just start trusting and making a game loop that's fun, doubling down on their IP, strengthening their IPs. When you see all these, developers getting laid off and all these IPs are getting lost to time, it's like, man, all those had potential to develop a fan base. And no, it won't happen with one game. No, it won't happen with two games. It takes time to develop these games. It takes time to develop these IPs. It takes time to double down on these things. That's why you gotta invest in these products, invest in these properties. And I just hope that more people take notice of what happened with Pokemon Pokopia, and we don't forget those lessons in the future. Those are all my thoughts. I know it was kind of maybe it was a lot. It was a lot more than I expected to say. Time kind of went by really fast with this one. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna leave it like that. Let me know down below your guys' thoughts, and I'll see you guys in the next one.